It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Nothing special about the day. Nothing that should have changed our entire understanding of life and death and the darkness that can survive between them. My 5-year-old daughter Claire was drawing at the kitchen table while I prepared dinner. She had been unusually quiet all day, which wasn't like her. Claire was typically chatty, full of questions about everything from why birds fly to what makes flowers grow. But that afternoon, she sat in concentrated silence, her small hand moving carefully across the paper. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" She looked up at me with eyes that seemed decades too old. "The bad man who hurt me before." "What bad man, Claire?" "The man who killed me in 1922. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, toxic, impossible. "The man with the scar on his face. He said he loved me, but then he hurt me very badly." She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was describing what she had for lunch. But her drawing showed a figure in a dark coat standing over a much smaller figure lying on the ground. Red crayon surrounded the small figure like a pool of blood. "My name is Jennifer, and this is the story of how my daughter Claire revealed a murder so brutal, so meticulously documented, that it shattered everything I thought I knew about justice, memory, and the possibility that some souls return, seeking the truth that was buried with them." Claire had always been an unusual child. While other kids her age were afraid of monsters under the bed, Claire was afraid of specific types of men. Men with facial scars, men wearing long dark coats, men who spoke too softly and smiled too much. "Stay away from the nice men," she would whisper to me in grocery stores when strangers tried to talk to her. "Which men, honey?" "The ones who pretend to be nice. They're the most dangerous." What 5-year-old understands the concept of predatory behavior? What 5-year-old knows that the most dangerous people often present themselves as the safest? Claire had an inexplicable knowledge of things no child should know. She would refuse to walk alone anywhere, even in our own house. "Bad things happen when little girls are alone," she would say. She had nightmares about being chased through woods, not the typical childhood dreams about being chased by imaginary monsters. Detailed, specific dreams about running through dense forest while someone pursued her. "He's calling my name," she would sob after waking up. "But it's not my real name. He's calling me Ruby." Ruby, not Claire. A different name entirely. "Who calls you Ruby, sweetheart?" "The man with the scar. He always called me Ruby because of my red hair." Claire had strawberry blonde hair. Beautiful, but not truly red. "In my dreams, my hair is different. Longer. More red." "What else do you remember about the dreams?" "I'm wearing a blue dress with white buttons, and black shoes that hurt my feet because they're too small." The level of detail was disturbing. Most children's dreams are vague, shifting, illogical. Claire's dreams had the consistency of memories. "Where are you running to in the dreams?" "Home. I'm trying to get home before dark because Mama said never to be out after dark. Do you make it home?" Her face would crumple. "No. He catches me." And then she would never finish that sentence. But the terror in her eyes said everything. The first major incident happened at Claire's 5th birthday party. We had invited several families from her preschool to our backyard for cake and games. One of the fathers, a man named Robert who worked with my husband, had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident. The moment Claire saw him, she started screaming. Not crying, screaming like she was being murdered. "It's him! It's him! Don't let him hurt me!" She ran behind me, clinging to my legs, hyperventilating. "Claire, honey, that's just Mr. Peterson. He's David's daddy from your class." "No, he's the man from the woods. Look at his scar." Robert was understandably confused and concerned. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know what I did to frighten her." "She has a thing about facial scars," I explained. though I felt foolish saying it. We don't know why. But Claire was inconsolable. He's going to hurt me like he hurt Ruby. Don't let him take me to the woods. It took 2 hours to calm her down, and even then, she wouldn't come out of her room while Robert was still at the party. That night, she gave me more details about Ruby. Ruby was 7, she told me as I tucked her into bed. She lived in a town with lots of trees and a big lake. What was the town called? I don't remember the name, but it was small. Everyone knew everyone. Tell me about Ruby's family. She lived with her mama and papa and baby brother Tommy. They had a white house with a red roof near the school. What happened to Ruby? Claire's expression grew dark. She was walking home from school. It was getting dark because she stayed late to help her teacher clean the blackboards. The specificity was unnerving. Helping the teacher clean blackboards was such a period-appropriate detail. The man with the scar was waiting by the woods. He said he knew her papa, and that her papa sent him to walk her home. A classic predator technique, claiming to know the family, offering to help. Ruby believed him because he seemed nice, and because she was scared to walk through the woods alone. What happened in the woods? Claire paused, struggling with words. He did bad things to her, things that hurt. And when she tried to scream, he put his hands around her neck. Strangulation. My 5-year-old daughter was describing being strangled to death. Then what happened? Ruby went to sleep forever, but she could still see everything. She watched the man bury her under the big oak tree. She watched him bury her? Claire nodded solemnly. Dead people can see for a while after they die. Ruby watched him cover her with dirt and leaves. She watched him walk away like nothing happened. What happened next? Ruby's mama and papa looked for her everywhere. They asked everyone in town if they had seen her, but nobody knew where she was. Did they find her? Not for a long time, and when they did find her, the man with the scar was gone. He left town right after he hurt Ruby. This was starting to sound less like imagination and more like a cold case, an unsolved murder from a century ago. Claire, you said this happened in 1922. How do you know what year it was? Because Ruby's papa talked about the war being over. The big war. And it had been over for a few years. World War I ended in 1918. A few years later would indeed be around 1922. But how could a 5-year-old understand the historical context of post-WWI America? That night, after Claire fell asleep, I found myself researching unsolved murders from the 1920s. I searched for missing children, for small towns near lakes, for cases involving strangulation. What I found made my blood run cold. The case of Ruby Mae Hutchinson, age 7. Disappeared on October 15, 1922, while walking home from Millbrook Elementary School. Found 3 weeks later, buried under an oak tree in the woods outside town. Cause of death: strangulation. The case was never solved, but according to newspaper accounts, police had questioned a drifter with a facial scar who had been working odd jobs around town. He disappeared the same night Ruby went missing. His name was never recorded in the articles I found. He was only referred to as the Scarred Man, or the stranger with the marked face. Ruby Mae Hutchinson had lived with her parents and infant brother in a white house with a red roof, 3 blocks from Millbrook Elementary. Her father was a veteran of the Great War. Her mother was described as devoted and heartbroken beyond measure. Every detail Claire had mentioned. All of it documented in newspaper archives from 1922. All of it true. All of it impossible for her to know. I printed out the newspaper articles and stared at them until dawn. How could my 5-year-old daughter know the specific details of an unsolved murder from a century ago? How could she describe the perpetrator, the method, the location, the family circumstances with such accuracy? The next morning, I showed the articles to my husband, Mark. This is He started, then stopped. Exactly what Claire has been telling us. But Jennifer, this is insane. You're suggesting our daughter is the reincarnation of a murder victim from 1922. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just showing you what I found. There has to be another explanation. Like what? Like, I don't know. Maybe she saw something on TV. Maybe she heard adults talking. Maybe... Mark, look at these details. The year, the method of death, the family structure, the physical description of the perpetrator. This isn't general knowledge. This is specific information about an unsolved case that most people have never heard of. He couldn't argue with that, because it was true. The Ruby Mae Hutchinson case was largely forgotten, buried in newspaper archives and cold case files. There was no Wikipedia page, no documentary, no popular culture reference that Claire could have stumbled across. Just yellowed newspaper clippings from a small-town tragedy that had faded into obscurity. That evening, I sat down with Claire and showed her the newspaper photograph of Ruby Mae Hutchinson, a formal school portrait of a 7-year-old girl with long red hair and serious eyes. Claire stared at the photo for a long time. "That's me," she said quietly, "when I was Ruby. Do you remember having this picture taken? Mama made me wear my best dress and told me to sit very still. The man with the big camera said to smile, but I didn't feel like smiling." "Why didn't you feel like smiling?" "Because I knew something bad was going to happen. I had dreams about the man with the scar before he hurt me." Ruby had dreams about the man before she met him? Claire nodded. Bad dreams. Dreams about running through the woods and not being able to breathe. But Ruby didn't understand what the dreams meant. "Do you understand what they meant?" "Now I do. They were warnings." But Ruby was too little to understand warnings about bad men. That night, Claire had the most detailed nightmare yet. She woke up screaming about dirt in her mouth and not being able to move her arms. "He tied my hands," she sobbed, "so I couldn't fight back, and he covered my mouth so I couldn't scream." "Where did this happen, Claire?" "By the big oak tree, the one with the hollow space where squirrels lived." "What did the man look like?" "Tall, brown hair, a long scar from here to here." She traced a line from her left temple to her cheekbone. "And yellow teeth, and he smelled like tobacco and something else. Something bad." "What else did he smell like?" "Like he hadn't washed in a long time. And like mean." The description was vivid and consistent. The scar placement, the physical appearance, the smell. Details that a child wouldn't typically focus on unless they were seared into memory by trauma. Over the next few weeks, Claire shared more information about Ruby's life. She described Ruby's teacher, Miss Patterson, who was young and kind, and wore her hair in a low bun. She talked about Ruby's best friend, a girl named Susan who lived on the same street. She mentioned Ruby's pet cat, a gray tabby named Smokey, who slept on her bed every night. All details that could potentially be verified if the records still existed. But the most disturbing revelations came when Claire talked about the aftermath of Ruby's murder. Ruby's mama cried every day, she told me. She would sit by Ruby's window and look out at the woods where Ruby died. "What about Ruby's papa?" "He got angry, really angry. He wanted to find the man with the scar and hurt him back." "Did he find him?" Claire shook her head sadly. "The man was gone. He went far away where nobody could find him." "How does Ruby feel about that?" "Mad. Ruby is still mad that he never got in trouble for hurting her." "Is that why you remember being Ruby? Because she's still angry?" Claire considered this seriously. Maybe Ruby can't rest until people know what really happened." "Do you want people to know what happened?" "Yes. So other little girls don't get hurt by men with scars who pretend to be nice." The next day, I called the Millbrook Police Department. I know this is going to sound strange, I told the detective who answered. But I have information about the Ruby Mae Hutchinson case from 1922. The what case? Ruby Mae Hutchinson, 7 years old, murdered in 1922. Never solved. Ma'am, that would be way before my time. That would be, let me see, over 100 years ago. I know how it sounds. But my daughter has been having memories, very specific memories about the case. Memories? She knows details that weren't in the newspaper accounts. Details about the perpetrator that might help if you still have the case files. I'll have to check if we even have records going back that far. Can you hold on? After several minutes, he came back on the line. We do have some archived files from that period. Detective Morrison handles our cold cases. Would you like me to transfer you? Detective Morrison was patient and professional as I explained the situation. Mrs. Henderson, I have to tell you, this is unusual. But the Hutchinson case is one of our oldest unsolved murders. If your daughter really has information that could help, I'm willing to listen. She described the perpetrator in detail. Physical appearance, behavior, method. Things that weren't in the newspaper reports. Can you bring her in for an interview? She's 5 years old. I understand. We have child specialists who know how to talk to young witnesses. Would tomorrow afternoon work? The interview took place in a comfortable room designed for children. Detective Morrison and a child psychologist named Dr. Sarah Kim spoke with Claire while Mark and I watched through a one-way mirror. Claire, can you tell us about the man who hurt Ruby? Dr. Kim asked gently. He was tall, taller than Ruby's papa, and he had a scar right here. She traced the line on her own face. From when someone cut him with a knife. How do you know someone cut him with a knife? Because that's what knife scars look like. And because he told Ruby that someone tried to hurt him once, but he was stronger than them. What else can you tell us about him? He had a limp. His left leg didn't work right. And his hands were really big and rough, like he worked with them all the time. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Did he say anything specific to Ruby? He said she was pretty like his little sister who died. He said he missed his sister, and that Ruby reminded him of her. Anything else? He said he had candy in his coat pocket, but it was a lie. He didn't have candy. How did he get Ruby to go with him? He said Ruby's papa was hurt and needed her to come quick. He said Ruby's papa was by the big oak tree and couldn't walk home. A classic predator tactic, creating urgency and fear to manipulate a child. What happened when Ruby realized he was lying? She tried to run, but he was faster. And he grabbed her arm really hard and said if she screamed, he would hurt her papa too. Did Ruby believe him? Yes, because she loved her papa and didn't want him to get hurt. After the interview, Detective Morrison pulled me aside. Mrs. Henderson, I have to tell you, your daughter just described details that match our case files exactly. What do you mean? We have witness statements from 1922 describing a drifter with a facial scar and a pronounced limp. The scar placement your daughter described matches the police sketch from the original investigation. There was a police sketch? A rough one, based on witness descriptions. It was never published in the newspapers. But your daughter's description is remarkably consistent. Is there anything else in the files that matches what Claire said? The detail about the perpetrator claiming his sister had died. That's in the case notes. One witness said the suspect had mentioned losing a sister, but police never followed up on that lead. Why not? Because he disappeared before they could investigate further. The case went cold within weeks. Are you saying Claire's information could actually help solve this case? Mrs. Henderson, the case is over a century old. Everyone involved is long dead. But if your daughter really is remembering what happened to Ruby Mae Hutchinson, then yes, this could provide closure for the historical record. What do you mean? We could officially update the case files with the new information. provide a more complete picture of what happened. It wouldn't result in prosecution, obviously, but it might give Ruby's family the truth they never got. Ruby's family is dead too, yes, but the truth still matters, and other families have the right to know if there was a pattern of behavior we missed. Over the next few days, Claire provided even more specific details about Ruby's murder. She described the exact location where Ruby was buried. She mentioned that the perpetrator had carved his initials into the oak tree after burying Ruby. She said he had taken Ruby's school bag and thrown it in the lake to hide evidence. All details that could potentially be verified if anyone cared to investigate a century-old cold case. But who investigates murders from 1922? Who digs up evidence from crimes committed before their grandparents were born? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Vance, a criminal historian from the State University, contacted us after hearing about the case from Detective Morrison. "I specialize in historical crime patterns," she explained. "The Ruby May Hutchinson case has always intrigued me because it fits the profile of other unsolved child murders from that era." Other murders? There were at least 3 similar cases in neighboring counties between 1920 and 1925. All young girls, all strangled, all buried in wooded areas. Police at the time didn't have the resources or communication systems to connect the cases. You think it was the same person? It's possible. The MO is consistent. And in each case, witnesses described a drifter with facial scarring who disappeared after the murder. What does this have to do with Claire? If your daughter's memories are accurate, she might be providing details that could help us understand a pattern of historical crimes. That's valuable information, even if it can't lead to prosecution. Dr. Vance interviewed Claire extensively, over several sessions. Claire's descriptions remained consistent and detailed. She provided information about the perpetrator's behavior, his background, his methods that aligned with criminal profiling techniques. "He wasn't from around here," Claire told Dr. Vance. "He came from far away where there were big mountains and snow." "How do you know that?" "Because he talked different. And because he said he missed the mountains but couldn't go back because people there wanted to hurt him." "Why did people want to hurt him?" "Because he did bad things there too, to other little girls. A pattern of behavior. Multiple victims across multiple locations." "Did he tell Ruby about the other little girls?" Claire's expression grew dark. "He said Ruby was special like his sister, but also like the other girls who reminded him of his sister." "How many other girls?" "I don't know, but Ruby wasn't the first. And if nobody stopped him, she wasn't the last." Dr. Vance's research confirmed the possibility. There were indeed unsolved child murders in mountain regions during that time period. Cases involving drifters and transient workers who moved from town to town, avoiding law enforcement. Your daughter may be providing insight into one of the earliest documented serial killers in American history, Dr. Vance told us. But how is that possible? How could Claire know details about historical crimes that even experts haven't fully connected? I don't know, but I know the information she's providing is accurate and valuable. 6 months later, Dr. Vance published a paper connecting the Ruby May Hutchinson case to 4 other historical murders. She titled it, "The Scarred Man: Patterns of Historical Child Murder in Rural America, 1920 to 1925. Claire's testimony was included, anonymously as witness recollections that provided new insight into the perpetrator's methods and psychology. The paper helped solve several cold cases from the 1920s. Not in the legal sense, but in the historical sense. Families who had wondered for generations about their lost children finally had answers. Ruby May Hutchinson's case was officially updated to reflect the new information about her killer. But for Claire, the most important outcome was simpler. The nightmares stopped. The panic attacks about men with scars faded. The obsessive fear about walking alone disappeared. It was as if providing the truth about Ruby's murder had allowed both Ruby and Claire to find peace. "I don't dream about Ruby anymore," Claire told me recently. "Do you miss the dreams?" No, they were scary, but I'm glad I could help people know what really happened. Do you still feel like Ruby sometimes? She shook her head. Ruby got to tell her story. Now she can rest. And I get to just be Claire. Are you happy being just Claire? Yes, because Claire gets to grow up. Ruby never got to grow up. What do you want to do when you grow up? Help other kids who have scary memories. Like, you helped me? Last week, Claire drew me a new picture. Not the dark, disturbing images of violence that had dominated her artwork for months. This picture showed a little girl with red hair sitting under a tree. But she wasn't alone. She was surrounded by other children, all holding hands, all smiling. Who are all the children, Claire? The ones who got hurt but are okay now. Ruby is there, and the other girls the bad man hurt. They're all together now, and nobody can hurt them anymore. How do you know they're okay? Because they told me. In my last dream about Ruby, they said thank you for helping people know the truth. Are you glad you could help? Yes, because secrets about bad things make the bad things stronger. But when you tell the truth, the bad things lose their power. The wisdom of a 6-year-old who had carried the memories of a murder victim, who had borne witness to crimes committed before she was born, who had somehow channeled the voice of a child whose story had been buried with her body under an oak tree in 1922. Tonight, Claire sleeps peacefully in her bed. No nightmares about men with scars. No memories of being strangled in the woods. No visions of being buried under dirt and leaves while a killer walked free. Just the quiet sleep of a child who helped solve a century-old murder and gave voice to victims who had been silenced by death. But sometimes, when I'm tucking her in, she'll whisper something that reminds me of the impossible journey she's taken. Mommy, do you think Ruby is happy now? I think Ruby is very happy. Because of you, people know what happened to her. Good. Because all kids deserve to have their stories told, even the kids who died a long time ago. You're right, sweetheart. Everyone deserves to have their story told. Especially the scary stories, because that's how we keep other kids safe. So I ask you this. When a 5-year-old child describes being murdered with details that match century-old police files, when they provide information that helps solve historical cold cases, when they carry memories of trauma that belongs to someone who died before they were born, when they somehow become the voice for victims who never got justice, do you dismiss it as imagination? Or do you consider that maybe some souls return not just to live again, but to ensure that truth survives? That justice transcends death? That the stories of the lost and forgotten can find their way back to the world through the innocent memories of children? I used to think murder victims took their secrets to the grave. Now I wonder if the most important secrets refuse to stay buried. If consciousness can survive death, can trauma? Can the need for justice? Can the determination to protect other children from similar fates? I don't have all the answers, but I know that Claire helped solve a murder that had been cold for a century. She gave voice to Ruby May, Hutchinson, and several other victims. She provided closure for families who had waited generations for the truth. And she showed that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. The rest is just mystery. And some mysteries are too important to dismiss.